In the past, one of my first videos that I did was a video titled, "What is the Answer to Racism?" And within that video, it featured Morgan Freeman, the late Mike Wallace, and Don Lemon, formerly of CNN. This time, with the second installment, it's going to be featuring known movie superstar and actor Anthony Mackie, who over the years has made appearances in Marvel movies such as Captain America, Captain America Civil War, Avengers Affinity War, and Avengers Endgame. And on top of that, he has his own little spin-off of Captain America that's currently, streaming on Disney Plus, if I'm not mistaken. The reason why I'm going here is because, like Morgan Freeman, Anthony Mackie laid out some really good points in this sit-down interview he had where he was promoting the movie Black or White. So with that being said, I want to now take this time to delve into this video and really analyze some of those major points that he made and how they are relevant to right now. So without further ado, let's get into it.
Girl's life we're talking about.
You know what, Rowena? You petitioned for custody.
Louise needs more love than just what her grandfather can give her.
What she needs is stability, especially now since she's lost her grandmother.
One of her grandmothers.
Alex Hutchins, Black Tree TV.
What? Your tree be black? What's up? There we go. Wow, what you doing? Them ghetto Pilates? Dang, you in it, huh?
Wait, ghetto Pilates? Ghetto
I said, Jaheim, tighten up my body, working on my ghetto Pilates. You don't listen to Jaheim? Oh, come on, Jaheim. That's the hood Al Green. I love.
Yeah, man. Yeah, Jaheim, R&B legend, one of the all-time greats within that genre of music, man. A giant. Makes you wonder what he's doing right now nowadays.
Love Jaheim.
I don't even want to talk about the film now. I just want to let this go on forever. Okay.
Go ahead.
Speaking of hood. Okay, I want to cut right to it, Anthony, because
Please
you have one of the most cutting lines in this whole film, and I wrote it down so I can get it word for word. You're a goddamn cliche. You validate everything the white community thinks.
Right. And that line is the reason I did the movie.
Seriously?
100%.
Please expand. Tell
you
me
have
about
two
this.
lines in this movie that are extremely important. You're a goddamn cliche. You validate what white people think. And it's not your first thought that makes you a racist. It's your second, your third, and your fourth. Those two lines, I feel, are the lines that everyone is stepping around and no one wants to talk about.
I want to talk about.
Exactly. And those two lines right there can be summed up simply as racialism and I'm not a racist, but A, B, C, and D.
And that's what frustrates me. We're in a position now in society in this country where no one wants to listen. The smartest person in a conversation is the person who listens. So when you talk about black or white, when you talk about race, when you talk about sexism, when you talk about homophobia, I think the most interesting perspective is to sit back and just let that person talk. Because there's nothing I can add to that perspective. And the great thing about this movie is you get the white perspective.
Right.
You hear what he's thinking. You get the black perspective. You hear what she's thinking. Octavia's dealing with a drug-infected son. He's dealing with the loss of his wife and alcoholism. Those are two huge topics that are colliding with this little girl.
Right.
So
exactly. And the way that those happen in the movie, now I haven't seen the movie myself, but based off of the explanation, when you have, on one side dealing with drug-infested children, and then on the other side, loss of a loved one, be it your wife, husband, whatever the case may be, family member, and then alcoholism, that can happen in that same way and vice versa. And issues like that don't discriminate against anybody, right? Because anybody, in fact, many people of many different races and backgrounds have suffered that throughout the years and up to this very day.
Oh, it's frustrating to me that people take race and they make it personal. You know what I mean? Like we're at a loss in this generation. If you look at it in the 80s, Archie Bunker was a stark racist. Stark. If you don't know who Archie Bunker is, look him up. All in the Family, great show. The Jeffersons, stark racist. Fred Sanford, stark racist. But you know what black people and white people did? They laughed. You watch 48 Hours with Eddie Murphy and Nick Nolte. Both of them hated each other because he was black and because he was white. You know what they did? They laughed. And right now,
like, as you saw just now with that interviewer, nodding in approval to what Anthony was saying. Before reacting to this video, I've seen this video a couple of times in the past, and I looked in the comments and I saw how someone said that the interviewer basically went off script, and she allowed Anthony to really just lay down his points and really just, in other words, keep it real. And I appreciate that, and we need more of that nowadays, because this is something that I noticed with an interview that Denzel Washington did in regards to the movie Fences, where he was he was being interviewed, and an interviewer was constantly trying to push him down that path of, or that ideological path, more so, of victimhood. Right now, of course, Denzel, being as sharp and witted as he is, he didn't fall for it. He didn't go along with that narrative or fall for the proverbial banana in the tailpipe. Right. That's the thing, because oftentimes with some things like that, there's an agenda, particularly in regards to our people, in regards to this topic of racism, or race relations. I'm pretty sure oftentimes anybody else who gets interviewed about stuff like this, then for the most part, you don't see them trying to be pushed down that victimhood road, because for the most part, they don't embrace it. All right. And it's going to have to get to a point where more of our people have got to stop looking, try to embrace the victimhood mentality. You're right. And I'm not saying that we just automatically just say that racism doesn't exist. We should talk about it. But in regards to a Denzel, to a Morgan Freeman, and right here with Anthony Mackie, all of them, what they're basically saying is they understand and realize that certain strains of racism from way back then still exist in certain parts of the world today. Yes, even in America. But at the same time, what they're also saying is we shouldn't let those things, hold you back in life. I mean, you shouldn't always racialize whoever you meet and make it seem as though that person is just like it's just like everyone else of his own particular race of people. It's not the case at all. Right? That's really the case. So that's something to really remember and to keep in mind. Now, in regards to the examples he brought up in regards to, TV sitcoms, that's a great example. Great examples overall. And the reason why, because it illustrates that, yeah, it's not just white people who are racist out here. There are definitely black people who are racist too. All right. And that's why there's that saying that goes around within, the black community that, black people, we as black people can't be racist because we're not in positions of power. Now, from the perspective, I can kind of agree with that, because that's the case for ordinary blacks. Now, for affluent blacks out here, particularly those who are boule, aka Black Skull and Bones, also those who are part of the NAACP, the Urban League, and those who make up some of these race baiters, race hustlers, grifters within the race grievance industry. Yeah, they can definitely be racist. If they're not totally racist themselves, they're definitely pushing racism out here. That's really the case. And another point I want to make too before I continue this video is that reason why it seems like race is so personal nowadays, on one side, is because of politics, which is, always the case, especially towards election season, right? Because right now we're in the second day of the month of October, right? So right around the corner would be like, whether it be like November, December, or early 2024, with between that time period, there's going to be that election, right? And that's why they pushed a lot of these race stories within the media, and they don't really go into any full specifics, because the main purpose, the primary goal, is to get black people riled up, get them angry, get them triggered, so that way they come out, go and vote Democrat. So that way it keeps them on that plantation a little bit longer. But the way things are going right now, with the political shift that's happening in this country right now, where more blacks are, you know, um, who are down with Trump, do not be surprised come the 2024 election, where you have some of our people again who are down with Trump, vote Republican, look to try to get Trump back in office, and also for the rest of us who, who just might as well just go ahead and just sit the whole thing out. So don't be surprised if one or both those things happen, because 9 times out of 10, that's what's going to occur. And now another reason why race is considered so personal nowadays is because of this particular point that neither side, Democratic, Republican, and even some within the church system want to admit, is the fact that it's prophetic, right? For those of us who believe in the Bible, and who read the parts, particularly for example, in the New Testament, uh, when Christ and the disciples were conversing with one another, the disciples asked the Messiah, what will be the signs of his coming? And he laid it out for them. And one of the signs that he told them was that nation shall rise up against nation, and kingdom shall rise up against kingdom. That's where we are right now. That's why there's such racial tension, racial upheaval, and things of that nature. It's because of that prophecy alone, amongst others, right? So with that being said, there's never going to be a time when all of us are going to just come together, hold hands, and sing that old Negro spiritual that Dr. King prophesied 50 or 60 years ago. That's never going to happen. The same way, it's never going to be a time when all races are going to hold hands by a campfire, someone play a guitar singing Kumbaya. That's never going to happen either. Because both those instances, as good as they sound on paper, are idealistic as opposed to realistic, right? Or even biblical. So that's the reason why for a lot of this, racial hatred, right? But so far, hey, my man Anthony Mackie is on a roll right now, so let's keep it going.
We are in a society where we can't have a conversation because no one's willing to listen.
People are just shouting.
People are just shouting. People are walking down the street, hashtagging everything, but no one's listening. No one, white people, I truly believe white people don't have an outlet to express or question their views on race.
Exactly. Ding, ding. First, there's another point I want to make too. The way things are going right now, man, with like you say, with comedy right now, in my honest opinion, is the last bastion of honesty, because comedians, going back as far as to the times of the jouster, were the only ones who can say sort of things to the king or whoever was in power that nobody else had the power or ability to say. And that's what makes them so crucial, because they can take any and everything in life that's considered, they can be considered serious and even in some cases horrific, and make it laughable. They have that uncanny ability. And that's why I can respect comedians today, such as a Bill Burr, Dave Chappelle, Andrew Schwartz, Eddie Griffin, Theo Vaughn, amongst a couple others, who are standing their grounds and they're trying to keep comedy alive, because at the end of the day, everybody, particularly these sensitive people out here, have to remember that these are all just jokes. That's all they are, jokes. They're not to be taken too seriously, or nothing to frown about, or just think about too often. No, they're just jokes, as a means of helping you be able to laugh at yourself. That's what we need. More people out here, myself included, need to learn to laugh at ourselves more. Because if you can't do that, then why are you even alive? Why are you here? What's your purpose in this life, as opposed to just existing? and then you just die off without anybody really caring or even noticing. Nah, that's not the life to live, man. But now, in regards to the statement he just made about white people not having the outlet to really truly express their perspectives and viewpoints on race, is 1,000% correct. Because the way you have it right now, because anything they say, whether it be even if it's coming from a good place, and a number of times it is, what happens is they get called racist, they get called white supremacists, and on top of that, they get straight up canceled, deplatformed, ostracized, demoted, you name it. And that's what makes it to where they opt out of these racial conversations because they can't be honest. They can't really express their true feelings about the topic, at least this case publicly. Now, now for the most part, they have to really keep how they really feel behind closed doors, right? Outside of certain platforms like a Fox News or any other right wing media outlets. So, again, another great point. Spot on.
Because black people get too defensive about it, or because
one,
because it is personal to some people.
No,
I mean, it's a real thing.
It's very personal. But the reality is this: if you're ignorant about something and you can't ask me a question, so you're not ignorant, how do you get better?
Fair.
So if you come to me and you're yelling, "Oh, I hate black people because of A, B, C, and D," then you're ignorant. You're a fool. I can't talk to you. But if you come to me and say, "Look, like my friends do, look, you're a black dude. I feel like I can talk to you. So I don't understand A, B, C, and D."
Right.
And we have those conversations. We have a glass of whiskey, and we have because I do the same thing about white people, Asian people, and Latino people. Look, I really don't understand why.
And I think this film, it does a lot of, the whole issue of like, are we coddling these kids like Reggie in the film who, yes, the system is against them, but they also do bad behavior that breed stereotypes.
And that's why it's important. That's why it's important to have that conversation. No one wants to talk about perception when it comes to racial profiling. No one wants to talk about stereotypes when it comes to racial profiling. This is what I know. I'm a certified scuba diver. My first day of class, they told me this: when you're in shark-infested waters, everything in that water is considered a threat until proven otherwise. If it's a guppy, it could be a shark until you know it's a guppy. And I think as black men, we need to realize we're in shark-infested waters. And if we don't sit our young men down and we don't talk to them about perception, and we don't talk to them about stereotypes, we're doing them a huge disservice. Because if the police pull me over, prime example, I got pulled over by the police, come over to my window, flash his light in my face, hand on my pistol. I can handle that two ways. I can start yelling and screaming and tell him he a racist and he don't know me. You're doing this wrong. Or I can say, yes, officer, no, officer, or we done, officer. And both of them are going to have drastically different outcomes. Because what happens with young...
Exactly. In regards to both those outcomes that you just described, especially when it's happening, amongst our people within the hood, 9 times out of 10, those interactions are going to be recorded on their phones. On one hand, and on the other hand, some of these police cams, right? And that's why, and again, everything you're saying again is very true, because we as black men, for the most part, are indeed behind enemy lines, right? And the point he brought up about perception and negative stereotypes, you have black men and black women out here who are the complete opposite of those negative stereotypes and perceptions that's plastered all throughout mainstream media, all throughout Western society. In regards to the media, movies, television, music, you name it, right? Because you have black men out here who are successful in regards to getting up in the morning, going to work. They have a job or 2 jobs or so, or they're in like businessmen. They're in entrepreneurship, right? They're not selling drugs. They're not involved in criminality. They're not knocking up all these women out here. A lot of these, what they call thotties, baddies, hood rats, the case may be, and having a bunch of kids by these different women and not sticking around to take care of them, right? And then you have those children growing up to resent the father, and the mother hates the man's guts, right? you have brothers out here who don't match that at all. And on the other side, you have black women out here who same thing. They get up in the morning, go to work, they have a job or two, or also they could be business women who are into entrepreneurship, and they're not out here, trying to skeet up into every man they're with. They're not having all these different male friends out here. They're not, sucking the rod of all the different men, and then as a result of taking in all that different sperm or semen, exhibiting masculine traits of all the men that she's been with, right? That does happen. There's that, and also they're not out here, aborting their kids, or also getting involved in drug trafficking or certain petty crimes like some of the men are. They're not doing that, and they're not raising their daughters out here to pretty much carry the same traits or follow the same lifestyle that they had or that they followed. None of those things. Yeah, so that's on that side too. You have black women who were completely separate from that as well. So, but yet we have to be careful because you're still going to have outside stimuli that's going to view them just like those stereotypes, and even within their own group, their own people, their own family members, or their own race, right? So again, and people like that I can describe as being black conservatives, right? A Larry Elder, a Thomas Sowell, um, Walter Williams, rest in peace to that brother, Candace Owens, Jason Riley, Jesse Lee Peterson, Officer Tatum, right? And the list goes on of other known black conservatives who experience this on the daily, to the point where because they are the complete opposite of those stereotypes, they're shunned by the black community. They're ostracized by the black community. Things of that nature, right? So, that's that's a tough life to live, man. Especially when, for the most part, you have to pretty much get by on your own.
Black men, everything is susceptible to the question of your manhood. And what's going on in these streets ain't got nothing to do with my manhood.
Interesting.
If I'm gonna fight a police, I'm gonna fight him in a controlled environment, a court of law. I'm not gonna fight him on the streets.
But then what happens when we have these incidents that happen, maybe we've got differing evidence. We don't know how it escalated to what happens,
Right.
And then we don't ever get to the court of law.
And that's the problem.
How does that
That's
work?
the problem.
Exactly. Like I mentioned in another video that I did covering that specific episode of Blackish, where I mentioned about Freddie Gray, right? And how even though he was convicted, he had a weapon on him. He got injured to a point where he died and he couldn't have his day in court, right? And of course, there are also certain cases too where you have certain police officers who might plant drugs on the known suspect, even though the suspect could be clean, not doing drugs at all. There are cases like that as well. Absolutely. So, and that's why it's very important again, man. And I've heard this concept kind of going around a little bit, but it's true. We within the so-called black community need our own police force, most definitely. But it's very hard for our people because half the time, because we can't stand each other half the time, and we damn sure don't trust each other. There's some major problems, right? And especially with the fact that the original authority figure, was taken out of the home. So that being said, when you no longer have that level of authority, it's going to make it very hard for other black men, women, even children of our community to take you seriously as an authority figure and to show you that level of respect. So that's why I say, man, hey, it's going to have to come a point when we're going to have these, serious conversations, right? I believe that all this energy and effort that's put into having these racialized conversations, this same exact energy should be utilized into having real conversations with each other about not just race, but in regards to our family structure that's being almost non-existent, the destruction of the household, the communities, the disarray of young black men and black women out here being led astray into these alternative lifestyles that's not benefiting them in any way, if only for a very short period of time, right? And much more. These are the conversations we need to be having. But something is going to have to happen, and something is going to happen that's actually going to force us to have those conversations. It's going to force us to let go of the crabs in the barrel mentality that exists amongst our people, and it's going to get to a point where something catastrophic is going to force the black man and the black woman to come together like a cohesive unit, like we once were before, and to where both sides have to put their differences aside and just learn to forgive each other, love one another, stick with one another, and plan and come up with a plan on how to have us go forward to where we need to go, instead of staying stuck in the perpetual what that a lot of this policies, theologies, ideologies, and specifically culturalist behavior put us into.
Because now we're in a position where you can't fight your battle because we are relying on evidence. We can't get your truth. As a black man, your job is to make sure your truth is heard. That's it. So if the police want to wild out, I promise you, if you sit back, yes, officer, no, officer, if I'm wrong, arrest me, officer. Are you talking back? No, sir, officer. Why are you being aggressive? This is not aggression, officer. If it escalates past that, there's nothing you could have done anyway. All cops aren't bad cops. 99% of cops are really good dudes and women. I've 99% of the people I've met that are cops are dope. I have a lot of friends that are cops. But
There we go. That's a good thing to know, because for the most part, like these civilians out here, a number of these police officers themselves, you have to remember, are also human beings, and they get scared too when they're trying to do their job, because you never know, man, how these civilian interactions can turn left real quick, right? And the police officer, they see, not only does the cop have to keep himself composed, the civilian in question have to keep themselves composed too. So that's what it's all about. Learn to keep both sides learn to really keep their cools, and just make sure that whatever's going on gets gets dealt with quickly and respectfully. All right, so that way both sides can be able to go home at night and not have to worry about either one or both party sides getting killed. So you have to definitely keep that in mind. Now, of course, in regards to that 1% that he's talking about, yeah, I'm pretty sure some of those police officers are probably involved with, you know, Masonic, for part of Masonic Brotherhood, these fraternities or sororities, or if not flat out, degenerates themselves.
that 1%, that's the problem. And you want to give yourself every opportunity not to end up a statistic.
Bingo.
And not saying you're doing anything wrong, not saying the cops are wrong, not saying you're wrong, but you have to realize the position that you're in. As a beautiful young lady, you have to realize the position that you're in. And you have to do everything to make sure you make it home at night. That's what my daddy taught me.
Bingo. Exactly. Yes. And that's the same sentiment that Denzel Washington stated in that iconic interview that he had in regards to the promotion of Roman J. Esquire, where he said it starts in the house, it starts in the home. Exactly. That's where it starts. And also keep in mind, too, Denzel Washington is also the same man who stated along this very topic right here of race relations that you can't legislate love, right? You can't legislate people into loving you. that's another gold nugget of information right there too. So I gotta tell you, man, Denzel, Morgan, and Anthony are all of them are on point when it comes to their viewpoints and perspectives on race. So I gotta give it up to them, man. They are.
And I think that's what's so important about this movie. If you look at Octavia Spencer's character, the way she deals with her son, if you look at what I say to Reggie about him being a stereotype of what white people want to think, certain people want you to justify what they view you to be. And you can't give them that right.
Take their power, but not doing it.
100%.
Woo, we could do
Absolutely.
this all day.
Thank
you. Thank you. Taking the
That's it for that video right there. And yes, that's a very good closing point right there. Yes, you can't play into what people want you to be, and then when you do so, you get offended and you cry racism. No, that's why what you have to do is you just show people that you're not that way, right? And then of course you have some of those same people who will say that, well, you're different. You speak so well, you speak professionally, you speak clearly and things of that nature. You might say certain things like that, and I'm sure that does happen a number of times. But the very important thing to remember is, not to let it bother you. All right, maintain that thick skin. Okay. So that being said, that's it for that video on the topic of racism, race relations. And before I close this video out, I just want to say, even though a lot of what's going on out here is prophetic, like I just mentioned a little earlier, uh, that doesn't mean we should use that right or excuse as a means to do any type of harm or evil to any other race of people that looks different than you. Because remember, the Bible also says you should learn to be at peace with all men. All right, that's because at the end of the day, you should treat people the way you want to be treated. And then with that, that's my time. Thanks for listening, and I'm out. Peace.